Hola, and good day to you joining us. Thank you so much for your company. It's lovely to welcome you and top SalesShaker voice, Todd Caponi, woo! Author of the Transparency Sale. For a podcast, whatever you want to call it. We do it with attitude, shaking sales from Portugal, in Portugal, for Portugal. And all sales leaders and professionals out there, from multinationals to startups and everything in between. Hi, hello, people, welcome. Developing business out there, helping your clients to win, positioning your competitive advantages to stay ahead and stand out. I salute you. Todd, how are you doing today? How's Chicago?
I am fantastic. I am well caffeinated and can't wait for this discussion.
Thank you so much again for spending this time with us. You're the author of the amazing book, The Transparency Sale. It's got a very long title. I'm going to read it. It's How Unexpected Honesty and Understanding the Buying Brain Can Transform Your Results. And I loved reading this book. I can't wait to do my second run of the book. But help us to understand, Todd. Tell us about what this transparency sale is about. Is it a methodology just like the Challenger, or value selling, or spin selling? What is at the core of this approach?
Well, why don't I start with a story, right? We all like stories. So here's what happened. In my last role, I was the chief revenue officer of a company in the ratings and reviews technology space, right? And meaning you're buying a pair of shoes, you look at the product, you scroll down, there's reviews under it. That might've been us that was helping in the background with the collect and display. We did it for 1,000 retailers and brands. Here's what happened though. Just innocently, we did a research study that was just looking at consumer behavior when a website is acting as a salesperson. Essentially looking at, all right, when a consumer is making a purchase that they haven't bought before, what do they do? What actually triggers their decisions? There's 3 data points that came out of it, 2 of which changed my life like could only happen to a nerd like me. And here's the 3. The first one did not change my life. It was no surprise. And it came back that, hey, we all read reviews today, right? So on a website, when a website's acting as a salesperson, you haven't bought something before, you're going to read a review. That at the time it was 96%. I never found the 4% that don't. The last research update brought it up to 99%. So there's still one person out there that's like, no way on reviews, but that's cool. Here's the 2 data points that changed my life. Number 1, 85% of us go to the negative review first. So when you're reading, you're going to make a purchase, you skip the 5-star reviews and go right to the 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s. Again, when a website is acting as a salesperson. And the other one, that last data point, was that a product on a 5-star scale that has an average review score between a 4.2 and a 4.5, it's optimal for purchase conversion. And now, what does that mean? You're probably like listening to this going, yeah, I could see that. But to really kind of slap it, that means a product that's got negative reviews right under it, right alongside it, that we as consumers go to first, helps the product sell faster and better. And I thought, all right, that's crazy, number 1. And like, why does that happen? So being the behavioral science nerd I dug into it. But most importantly, I was trying to make the connection to human or B2B selling. That if that's the case when a website's acting as a salesperson, as a human, what if we led with the imperfections? What if we presented our solutions as a 4.2 to 4.5? What would happen? Behavioral science all confirmed, yes, emphatically, we as human beings subconsciously don't believe perfection, right? Like somebody comes with you like 5-star speak in your face all day long. You're like, whoa. Our brains are prediction machines. We don't buy when we're convinced. We buy when we can predict. That's why we go to the negative first. We started trying it, presenting our solutions as imperfect, leading with helping the buyer set accurate expectations. And the result was faster sales cycles, improved win rates. We qualified deals in faster and better. We qualified deals out faster that we're going to lose anyway. and we made it harder on our competitors to message against us. And the end result was we became Chicago's fastest growing tech company from 2014 to 2017. And I was like, I got to get these ideas out there because it not only feels good to be transparent and honest, but it actually sells better. And then you add to it, you know, we were talking before we hit record here about like modern selling. The one prominent thing that we all need to recognize is that the pervasiveness of reviews and feedback on everything we do, buy, and experience means we got to do it anyway, right? So it sells better, feels better, and we got to do it anyway. So now is the time to embrace it. And that's where the heart of this book comes from. So I wouldn't call it a methodology. It should be a head slapper, like, of course, kind of a philosophy. And then the way the book is written, here's the behavioral science and philosophy, and then here's the tactics for how you apply it to your messaging, positioning, presenting, negotiating, handoffs, client success, interviewing, the whole gamut. So that was a lot, maybe more of an answer than you're looking for, but you can tell I'm pretty passionate about this stuff.
I love that you're passionate about that. And by the way, everybody around the world is probably going to hear it here first. It will become a methodology. Yeah?
It probably will, yes.
Imagine that. It certainly feels like it has the power for it. And you mentioned all of these channels. I mean, tell us a little bit more about how do we adapt and adopt transparency into all of these channels, because it's not just reviews, it's references, it's every single part of the sales cycle. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you really think about it, like, transparency begets transparency, first of all. I've got a kind of a funny quick story on that, where like I went to buy a car and I did all of the things they tell you not to do when you're going to go buy a car, right? Like, you know, don't tell them how you intend to pay, right? Leave that to the end. Like, if you're going to lease, buy, finance. Number two is, if you got a trade-in, don't tell them until the end. And then number three, if there's something wrong with your trade-in, don't tell them that. And what ended up happening is I walked in just kind of being the nerd that I am. And I was like, hey, listen, number one, I'm ready to pay. Like, I've figured out the financing. I'm going to write a check today. Number two is I have a trade-in. And number three is, see that smoke swirling around in the parking lot? That actually was coming from my car as I pulled in. And like literally within 10 minutes, this sales rep, who was like, you know, Johnny Slick, was sharing issues with his ADHD, issues with his relationship with his dad. We talked about his career. He would like talk, we started planning that. I asked him what his compensation plan looked like as a car salesperson. He just pulled it out and shared it with. So the point being that, listen, I think we all can relate to this idea that when we're able to predict, trust is built, right? The pros and the cons. Like, we don't trigger a decision until we know whether the juice is going to be worth the squeeze. And if we never can find out what the squeeze is, we can't trust all the goodness that's being talked about with the juice. So we can apply it to literally everything we do that involves influencing somebody else to do something else. As long as it's done for good and not evil, as long as it's good to help them predict, like, that's its core. So to your point, it's B2C, like the most successful B2C brands in the world actually brand what they give up. Like, think about the IKEAs and the warehouse shopping clubs. Like, here in the US, there's Costco's and Sam Clubs. There's Southwest Airlines here in the US. There's insurance companies that are sharing rates. It starts there, but in the B2B world, it's, hey, here's something a competitor does better than us. And if that's going to be important, let's talk about that now. Or, hey, our pricing is a bit at the high end. For a solution, you know, for a company like yours, it's going to be between X and Y. If that's going to be trouble, let's talk about that now. Because if you're talking about a 6-figure solution to a 4-figure buyer, one of you's in the wrong discussion, right? Like, get that out now. Do you want to know now, or do you want to know in 3 months? It's things like that. What is the buyer going to find out? And embrace it. Because in the end, if the truth won't sell it, don't sell it.
Wow. If the truth don't sell it, don't sell. Why do you feel, you study the history of sales, and we were chatting about that earlier. I love your knowledge about the history of sales. Why do you feel that there is such a reluctance or fear from on the side of sales professionals to tell the truth in that sense, to kind of present themselves or their solutions kind of in less than an optimal spectrum? Why do you think that is?
Well, there's so many reasons. A lot of it is systemic, and a lot of it comes from sales leadership. My next book, The Transparent Sales Leader, will be out in the summer, where I'm going to address a bunch of that. But I think there's three pieces. Number one is a lot of salespeople have been taught to just hide the flaws, right? Sell, sell, sell. That we buy when we're convinced, and that's just not the case, especially in the 2020s with the pervasiveness of information, the pervasiveness of the ability to network with other peers that have bought the solution, the pervasiveness of review sites. If you're in the technology space, the G2s, the trust radiuses, the glass doors, like everywhere, like this feedback is everywhere. So that's number one. Number two is the way, like when I talk about systemic leadership issues, one of them is a big one that I'm trying to erase from the world of sales leadership. And I used to do it myself, right? Like, I'm embarrassed. But it was this idea of pipeline load as a measure by which you measure your salespeople. And here's what it sounds like. Helga, listen, at all times, your pipeline needs to represent 4x your quota. Right? You've probably heard that. You've probably been managed that way, right? That at all times you need to have 4x because we're only going to close 25%. So what is a rep to do? Lose slow, right? Because they're not going to risk that, and fill their pipeline with crap, right? And so like sales leaders need to step back from that and go, hey, listen, how do we get better at qualifying out and losing faster? Start measuring time to loss as a key performance indicator. How long is it taking us to lose these opportunities? And is there something we could have shared or we would have known earlier that would allow us to get better? And maybe your pipeline load should be 2x your quota if you lose faster, and if you learn lessons from every single deal you lose so that you can continue to hone that. So 2x means close a higher percentage of the deals you do work and spend that extra time prospecting and building opportunities that you should win. So I guess to pull back on that, a lot of it is systemic from the way we measure and thinking about the old school metrics of pipeline loads. We got to clear that. And we got to start thinking efficiency. The best organizations, the most successful ones, like right now we're at a kind of a high from an economic perspective. Pendulum always swings. When things get tight, nothing is going to ensure your survival more than an efficient sales organization. And I believe that efficiency starts with transparency.
Can you just share with us? I love I read the book, so I know the answer to this. But can you just share with everyone? You gave a really good idea for how sales leaders can kind of pivot how they measure efficiency and performance of their sales members, of their sellers. Can you share that with us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And I dig into it a lot more in this next book, but it's called the results formula. I had heard it years ago and then kind of modified it and kind of made it my own. But essentially, it was this idea that, like, as a sales leader, I remember there was a time where, as the quarter would end, like I'd look over and my sales operations person that did all my metrics and all that stuff would be like hiding under their desk. Like, like Todd's going to ask me to measure 4,000 things again. I got to the point where I was like measuring things that didn't matter. We were like, it was creating false conclusions. And then I went back to this results formula and I was like, wait, there's only 4 things that drive our results. Like 4 key measures that if we know those, first of all, and that the 4 are the number of opportunities that you're working on, how big each one is, how often you win them, and how long it takes you to win them, right? So deal size, deal volume, win rate, cycle length. Now there's a formula that goes along with it. And here's the fun thing about this formula. It's this idea that if we just make incremental changes to each one of those things, the results that spit out the back, and it's just math, are huge. Like I remember, a manager coming to me and like, hey, Todd, I know you just killed it this last year. Like you did, like you ran through a brick wall for a company. Thank you. Oh, by the way, your quota just went up 20%. Like, wait, you just told me I did as much as I could, and now you're going to raise my crazy? Well, the math on this is if you increase the number of opportunities that you're working by just 5%, 5%, like if you work 20 opportunities in a year, 5% is one, right? Like one more opportunity. The organization itself and your efficiency should make that easy. So 5% there. 5% growth in your average deal size. So let's say your average deal size is $40,000. That's $2,000, right? Find another $2,000. Your win rate, improve that by 5%. So if you win 60%, that's 63% now, right? That's probably one more deal. And then your cycle lengths, right? You improve your cycle lengths by 5%. So that's typically a couple of days. The result is 21% growth. Every time, do the math. I got a spreadsheet for you if you need to like do the math on it. It's going to be really hard to plug in your own numbers and spit out the exact results, but the math always says that if we make those tiny incremental changes, your growth on the back end is huge. As a sales leader, communicating that to your team gives them that path to go, yeah, I can do that. But as a sales professional, salesperson, think about your own numbers and go, what kind of tweaks can I make? And I'm biased, but transparency plays a key role in that. Like you can see some huge incremental gains in your win rates, the number of deals that you work that you should win, and your cycle lengths just by embracing what you do great, but what you give up to be great at that core. Embracing that stuff has magical impacts on all the things that lead to your results.